Scott. Good morning, everyone, to the Trinity County Board of Supervisors on May 21st. Supervisor Rose, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. We'll move into public comment. This time is for information from the public on matters not appearing on this agenda. All comments are limited to 3 minutes and must pertain to matters within the jurisdiction of this board. When addressing the board, please state your name for the record and address the board as a whole through the chair. No action or discussion will be conducted on matters not listed on the agenda. However, the chair may refer to the subject matter to the appropriate department for follow-up or schedule the matter on a subsequent board agenda. All right, anyone wishing to speak on public comment, please step to the podium.
Good morning. I'm Kip Court from the Golden Age Center, and we were asked by PSA 2's Terry Gabriel to be here to receive a proclamation for the Older Americans Month. So I don't know, it's not on the agenda, so I'm just asking the question because I was asked to be here to receive it. So, just so you know.
May I? It's perfect. It's not on the agenda. It was on the agenda 2 weeks ago.
Ah, they told me the 21st. I
Well,
apologize.
they're two.
Something was
right.
something's amiss.
Right.
So
Sorry, kid.
that's okay. I just wanted to be here.
We'll get it to you if you'd like.
No, it's just a matter of, I promised I would be here, and that's the point. So
Okay.
I apologize for not calling their office and confirming the date, because that was told the 21st.
That's okay. It was accepted at the PSA 2 meeting yesterday. The
It
executive
was.
board meeting.
Oh,
yes.
okay, well, very good.
Thank
So
you.
they at least received it.
Thanks for coming by.
Well, sure.
All right, anyone else for public comment, please step to the podium.
Yeah. That's good news about the award. My name is Alex Dreyer. I'm a Weaverville resident. And I'd like to call attention to the plight at the Golden Age Center. You know, we voted Republican, and congratulations, we're getting our budget cutbacks. And one of the victims of that is our Golden Age Center. As most of you know, half our population is over 50. Of that, many receive basically their only meal of the day from the Golden Age Center. So we're looking at a serious situation that's actually going to harm our community. That's it. Thank you. I suggest that instead of buying pretty ribbons that bring attention to the plight of the Uyghurs or the Rohingyans or whatever, we direct some of that money to people who are local and are going to be needing it very soon. Thank you.
Anyone else?
My name is Jim Stillwell. I'm from Haysport, California. I've had one of your county mounties harassing me as a code enforcer for the county, and illegal codes that are put out to the public, denying them the use of the privacy and the right to, inalienable right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and also putting the person in double jeopardy through the county. I got 20-some cars on my property that I've bought and paid for. They might not have a title in my name yet, but I can get that title. It's not a problem. Also, on a second note, I'd like to report to you that the Board of Supervisors in the past and present support the hospital tax, which is an illegal and unconstitutional tax. The John Jelisich put that through LAFCO and failed to send each property owner a notice in the mail to their address, kept within the county here at the tax roll, to tell you how much the tax is gonna be, what it's gonna be used for, how long it's gonna be, and a place on that letter to vote yes or no on the initiative, and 45 days to study it, and he never did that. Therefore, the ramrod is taxed down our throat. Scam. Thank you. I'd like to get it put on the agenda too.
Anyone else? All right, just for the board update, Supervisor Finley and I are certainly been talking with Kit on the Golden Age Center and PSA 2 funding, so we will keep you up to date on that. All right, moving on to presentations 1.1. Receive a presentation from Wes Whitner with the Trinity Trail Alliance regarding the LaGrange Classic Fight Race scheduled for June 8th, 2019. No fiscal impact. Good morning, Wes.
I'll sit up here where you guys are. So, first of all, I'd like to just thank you guys for taking the time to check out this presentation. I know we've been bugging staff for a little bit, and it's hard to jam something like this in with everybody's work. We all got our head down just pushing forward. So hopefully this can be a presentation on just some really neat stuff that's going on in our community. I know sometimes we're working so hard, it's hard to look up and recognize that. But there's been a big group of people that have been pushing on this, and I just wanted the board to be aware, and anybody who's from the public here as well. So this is not an accident. This presentation was actually, we put it on down at the first annual State of Jefferson Trail Summit. And the disclaimer they threw out in the beginning, it had nothing to do with politics. It was more based on the region is how it got its name. So before we strike up too much emotion in the crowd. But this was back in February, and it was a fantastic event. It pulled a group of people from Southern Oregon all the way down to Chico, from Mount Shasta all the way to the coast, a bunch of different trails groups, and it was that realization that, hey, we're all kind of working on the same stuff, and how can we join together, and started to create this really cool network that people were reaching out to. And it's quite a movement coming up, and so we're real happy to be a part of it. And Trinity County had a pretty good place on some of the stuff that you're going to see in this slide that other groups were not. So that was back in February. So the Trinity Trail Alliance, and I didn't give the introduction because it already. So I'm Wes Scribner with the Trinity Trail Alliance. Our group was formed back in 2016, and it was just kind of a grassroots effort of all of us getting together, saying, hey, we need to kind of start pushing a little bit more in our community on our trails and start to kind of market and provide these opportunities for our youth coming up. So we pulled together some cash amongst the group. We formed a 501c3, which allowed us to be a chapter of IMBA, which is International Mountain Biking Association. And from there, I'm pretty sure everybody knows where we are, hopefully. This was our mission statement, and really it's to promote all trails for all uses throughout all of Trinity County. You'll see that a lot of this presentation is focused on bikes just because it's the hot topic for the moment, and we had to start somewhere. But our ultimate goal is to reach out to the entire county to all uses, whether it be hikers, bikes, horses, just any recreational use for the trail. So the trails are nothing new. We didn't invent them. They've been here. There was the Weaver Basin Trails Committee started back in the 80s and worked diligently to get this locked into the planning documents for Trinity County. They did a fantastic job here in the Weaver Basin Trail System, and for the last 30 years they've been doing really, really well. And it's a hidden gem that we have up in our mountains, but all of us that enjoy them realize that there's not many people out there, and it's becoming real popular. Is going around hitting these trails. This is something that we can advocate to the rest of the North State and the U.S. to say, hey, come on over and check out our trails. So what the next steps were is getting the trails out there. We saw a disconnect, especially with our youth and our community. We're constantly fighting against screens and video games and phones and technology. And well, we live in such a beautiful area, and we have these resources out here. So we thought what better way to do it than to build a bike park, which is essentially a bike playground, in the city center to get the kids on bikes, get them on 2 wheels, and then help to try to transition them out. So that was the big plan. It's a big cost and it's a big job to tackle, especially with a small group. So that's how we started our organization, Trinity Trails Alliance. We had to come up with a plan, we had to get permission to do it, and then, of course, we had to find some money. That's the easy part, right? So here's the plan. We reached out to Trinity Trail Labs, a gentleman, Andrew Pelkoffer. They've been going around the western United States pushing this and doing plans in other communities. And so we sat down and kind of came up with a conceptual idea of basically our wish list of what we'd like to see. Currently, right now, on the bottom left-hand corner, you see that little teal circle there. It's a pump track, and right above that is a skills area. That's our phase 1 that we're working on right now. In the fall, we got the pump track installed. We're currently working on the skills area. We got some more work to do. And once that gets all polished up, we'll work on moving on to phase 2, which is down on the lower right. So a big old hurdle was where to put a bike park. We went and reviewed a couple different areas, and at the end of the day, it kind of settled on Loudon Park was a great platform to place this, just because the land was there. The majority of it wasn't being utilized. It was a central location, as well as the permitting became a lot easier because it fell within the existing use of the park. So then, of course, like I said, the easy part is getting the money. So we went through a process of just local donations. We were down at the farmer's market every week, kind of peddling the concept, trying to raise donations. We had seed money coming from a local group of friends and family of Tammy, but we needed a little bit more cash flow coming in. So we brought back the 2018 LaGrange Classic race, and this time we brought it back. It's a race been running for over 20 years. It was typically held up at the high school. Riders would come in, they would ride from the high school out on the trails, they'd come back, hit their car, and go home. So there was no retention, there was really no advertising of our community. So we said, hey, we're going to be putting this bike park in the park, so let's go ahead and start it at Loudon Park. So it allowed us to open it up to vendors coming down. We got Sierra Nevada as a sponsor because we can do it on park grounds. There's camping for RVs and whatnot. And we're really trying to push turning this more into an event rather than just a race. So that was a huge hit. Everybody loved it. We had probably twice the riders that we thought we would. And we're getting ready to come back for our second one coming up here in a couple weeks on June 8th. And getting a good response of people wanting to come back. So hopefully we're going to start this annual tradition rooted in the park. And that race brought us in about $11,000 additional funding, which, as you guys know, as once you start coming up with match money, then there's other folks that will step up to the table with funds. So one of those was the CCCs. We wrote a grant to the CCCs, and they granted us a substantial amount of money for some infrastructure, as well as labor too. So we had the crews out there last fall, and we put up some new fencing around the park. We put in new circulation paths around the park. We kind of laid the foundation for the bike park coming in. And then we also got some funding from the McConnell Foundation, and I can't rattle off, but there was a bunch of different sources of funding coming in, and so we started purchasing all the materials. On the right is the blank slate. This is the area that we kind of knocked down and then started hauling base in to start the construction of the pump track. Not to get into too much details, but the pump track concept is something that's kind of new and up and coming. The idea is it's not a BMX track. It's really to start generating flow and rhythm. And the concept is once you get out there, you could ride for hours, if you can, without ever pedaling. So you generate your own momentum by rolling over the rollers and pumping them. And it's really addicting, I gotta say. And watching the kids do it looks like a lot of fun. And you get out there and you realize even though you're not pedaling, it's extremely strenuous and it's a good workout. So this is the construction of the pump track, which took a large amount of base. But at the end of the day, we started getting our rollers in. We had a bunch of community volunteers that came out towards the end of it. We spread some bark around to try to put this thing into winter suspension. Our ultimate goal is to pave it here this summer. So it was a real good opportunity for us to rough it in a base material and let it sit for the winter, see how it does. We could ride it for a while to see if it rides well, if it's fun, if it's dangerous, if there's things that we need to change. And it did really, really well all winter long, even with the amount of rains that we had. We had some drainage issues, so that was beautiful to see. So we're still in construction. I just met out with this morning with the guy about getting some drainage stuff fixed for this next season. So it was a good trial run through the winter. And this is the semi-final product from the sky. If you guys jump on YouTube, there's a little video of these kids riding around out there. If you go to our website, you can also link to it. That's trinitytrailalliance.com. I believe. But so this is the aerial view of it. So this summer we'll be capping it with paving, which opens it up to more uses, not just bikes. So we can get skateboards and scooters out there. There's a small club of RC car guys that are really enjoying it, and so it's kind of opening up all kinds of new uses. It's really cool to see. So we talked about winter suspension, and this is the section that we just started kind of breaking ground on the skills course area. And the concept here is we're putting in a bunch of little ladder bridges. We're going to have boulders and rock gardens and just a bunch of different skills areas that you might encounter out on our trails on bikes to try to get the confidence built up between adults and the children who will come down here and conveniently use this and then head out onto the trails. Because riding our trails, it's real enjoyable, but it can be intimidating, especially to a first-time user. So this is built some confidence and get people out there. So like I said, we're not just about the mountain biking, but the trails out here are getting out of town. These are going to be the trails that we're seeing out here on the basin trails, and not only summer, but all season long. You can go out and hike them in the winter. We don't encourage the riding in the winter time because of the bike tires will tear up the ground pretty good, but we still see some pretty good use in the winter time. And reaching out of the Weaver Basin area, there's been a push over the last 5 or 6 years about completing the Trinity Lake Trail all the way around the entire lake, which is a fantastic concept with bring people in from all over if we could actually link that up. But that's a lofty goal because it's a lot of trail. It's a big old chunk. Over in Hay Fork, we got Ewing Reservoir. There's a group over there that's working on trails up around Ewing Reservoir. And then they also put a significant amount of work down in the South Fork of the Trinity. I personally haven't been there yet, around the Hell's Gate area, but I've seen a lot of pictures, and I know the folks that are working on those trails, and it seems like a hidden treasure back in there. So I can see that definitely being a destination coming up. But these are all the groups that we're reaching out to and saying, hey, let's all work together and see if we can kind of put a whole package together. The Mayor's Mountain Bike Challenge, I'm not sure if anybody noticed, but they came back up here for a second time this last weekend, and that's a program they run through Healthy Shasta. And last year we got on their list of the required rides that you have to complete in order to complete the series of rides down there. So I think last weekend we had 30 to 40 riders that came up to do a guided trip with some of our local riders up here too, just to kind of show them around. Before that, because it had been running for almost 2 months before that, we had people trickling in through the week and on the weekends that are coming up. So, and they love our trails up here, and especially in the summertime when it starts getting too hot to ride down to Redding. A lot of folks come up here and ride our trails. And then, of course, our endurance horse rides have been a big hit for several years. They do that right around the 4th of July weekend, and they have a really good showing as well. They created a whole new horse camp up there off of Mustard Hill, where they go up and they park there and they ride 50-mile rides with the horses, and it's well coordinated and a fantastic event as well. We started up a Trinity High School Mountain Bike Club. We did it, not Trinity Trail Alliance, but it's the high school is jumping on board here as well. It's the fastest growing high school athletic event in the United States right now, and it's rooted here on the West Coast. So we thought, hey, we're living right in the mecca of trails, so why not participate as well? We have local groups that do Wednesday night rides. They don't typically go into the dark, but actually, night riding on your bike is a lot of fun, and once you do it the first time, you kind of hook. And then, this is one of my personal favorites. My kids went to Weaverville Elementary School, and they do the 3rd grade wagon train trip, and they utilize the trails where they actually push and drag their wagons for about 3 miles from the elementary school all the way through the Basin Trail system to East Weaver Creek Campground, and camp overnight, and then go back the next day. It's a really fantastic trip. And something that opened my eyes up is when the first time I had gone out there, we spent a lot of time out on the trails. Most of these kids don't. Most of them have never been out there before, and this was quite an adventure and a journey. I thought, well, what a shame. So this is a great program, starting at 3rd grade, for these kids now to have some ownership and say, hey, I've been out here, I've drugged my food and sleeping bag and my lazy friend all the way to East Weaver Campground. It was supposed to be my partner on my trip. So, of course, it's about partnerships. Trinity County was not a small player in this at all. Just by allowing us to host this on county property, in the county park, and giving us this support. We got the Lions Club, the CCCs, everybody else that is up there. It's been a great partnership. We're just getting started. Our group is about 50 members strong. And once we get through this, the focus here of this bike park here in downtown Weaverville, I'm really excited to see what happens with us cruising out onto the rest of the trails in Trinity County and really starting to try to promote our community. So a little late, but last weekend was the Mayor's Challenge, so we were pushing this with the group down there in February down in Reading. And then, of course, our LaGrange Classic coming up on June 8th. So I encourage everybody, even if you're not interested in bikes, come down to the park. We're trying to turn it into a community event. That pump track, we're going to utilize it for our first ever pump track trials. We'll do a competition on riding, just time trials. And we'll probably roll that over to the 4th of July weekend as well, opposed to the BMX race that we've always done. But it's shaping up to be a really good season. We're really looking forward to it. We've got a lot of work to do. And yeah, I'll open up if anybody has any questions.
Any questions?
Good work.
All right. Well, thank you.
Wes, I have one question.
Yeah.
Do you foresee your organization kind of being the lead if we get the 24-hour mountain bike race back again? Is that a possibility?
We have most of the people that were involved with that are in the program anyway, so I would imagine that I don't think anybody would turn it down by any means. And we kind of have the structure set up, with all of our committees and whatnot. Everyone's just kind of laid out, and we've already got the talent divided up on where it works. So absolutely, I think if it came back, we would welcome it with open arms.
It's great work. Thank you for the update and the presentation. And I have a Supervisor Chadwick.
Yes, thanks, Wes. If people want to get involved, what is their best way? Are you meeting monthly? How is there? You said we have 50 members. Is there a membership? If they wanted to donate, are you online? Can you explain that?
Yeah. So I'm glad you said that here on this slide. So we have the TrinityTrailAlliance.com. If you go to that website, we have all that information. There's forms on there if you want to be a part of it. I recommend people go through our website. You do have to become a member of IMBA to be a member of Trinity Trail Alliance. You can go directly to IMBA, but this is just a lot more straightforward. You can follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Our meetings right now seem to be weekly because we got bike park meetings, we got bike race meetings, and then we have the board meetings for the Trail Alliance. But they're all open to the public. So we don't really have the meeting times posted, I don't believe, on our website. But that's something as we start getting rolling a little bit more, we can definitely post the Trail Alliance meetings for sure.
Great, thanks. Anyone else? Any questions from the public? No? Great job, everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Moving on to consent calendar. These items include routine, non-controversial matters and will be acted upon the board by a one roll call motion. A member of the board, staff, or public may request an item be pulled separately or considered separately. Board members, any items you would like to pull? 2.5. Got it, all right. Any members of the public like to pull an item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board. All right. I will
I'll
entertain.
move to accept.
All right,
A second.
thank you.
Supervisor Chavez?
Aye.
Supervisor Burrows?
Aye.
Supervisor Brown?
Aye.
Supervisor Finley?
Aye.
Supervisor Moore?
Yes. All right, we're going to pull 2.5. Authorize the chairman to sign a letter to Congressman Jared Huffman supporting the reauthorization of public law 1110-161 regarding marina fees, no fiscal impact. All right.
Very simple, in the CCs, we don't CC the forest ranger for the NRA.
Ah, okay.
There's somebody on assignment right now, so I don't know, you'll have to.
Doesn't the district ranger Smalls kind of oversee that?
No.
No?
He does not,
Okay.
the NRA.
Just in case. So Pat Cross with the Trinity County Collaborative. So the acting ranger is Janine Book, so I can get you that information.
Can you just send it to Tina?
Yeah,
Okay.
Thank you.
you're welcome.
All right. Any other questions?
No, that was it.
All right, thank you, Pat. With that, not completed. Anybody else on this letter? No? All right.
I'll move to accept with change.
Second, Finley.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Seeing none, okay. So moved, thank you. Moving on to reports and announcements. Department head, anyone wish to, oh, ready?
Good morning. Lady Garza, Director for Health and Human Services. I just have a few items I just want to give some updates to the board. Most of them are good news. First of all, I just want to say that as unfortunate as we have foster care placements, since January we had 10, but the good news is that 9 of those children were kept in Trinity County. And also they were able to stay within their school of origin, which is real important to us. So I just wanted to share that good news. Our staff does an amazing job working with families. Our RFA program, which is our Resource Family Approval, program has really opened up opportunities for more placements, more foster homes in Trinity County. So I really want to give a shout out to our child welfare staff for doing an amazing job in working with families and recruiting and working really hard to keep them in the Trinity County. Great. So I want to share that with you. I just want to give the board an update. As you know, our Health and Human Services campus is on a lease. It's not owned by the county. We are exploring with the property owner on expansion. Our property owner is open to looking at expanding, and we're working with an engineer to build a 3rd building on our campus for public health and a bigger conference room, so when we have full staff meetings, we don't have to pay to use the Performing Arts Center. So our capacity of our current conference rooms are not big enough. Our staffing is now up in the 70s, so we're really outgrowing our facility. So again, I have met with CAO Dr. Coons and also the financial consultant Craig Goodman in the auditor's office to kind of review the proposal and what our plans are. So we are taking very careful, strategic steps in making sure that this is something that's feasible for us. So I just want you to know that. And we are encompassing what our anticipated costs in our budget for next year. So I just want to give you a heads up because those items may be coming to you at a future board meeting for a new lease. The property owner also is offering to look into property across the street next to Trindale to build a building for our OES department. Currently where OES is stationed is shared with the building and planning department. which you see where that space has expired, so we do need to find a new place. So it is another opportunity that our property owner is open to exploring with us. So again, we're looking at it very carefully, financially, logistically, so again, I'll keep you posted on that. Another positive news for you is I want to give you a measles update. Public Health Department has shared with me that Trinity County has no active cases of measles. And I really applaud all of our public health staff and nurses who work very closely with the schools in tracking the immunization records for all the students. They've had several press releases informing the public of taking precautionary measures and just the importance of the immunizations, and especially for those women who are pregnant and young children. So I just want to make sure you have that update because it is increasing. The count of measles is increasing through the country. In regards to OES, I just want to let the board know that this week, Ed Presley, our OES manager, and the state OES department has been here providing EOC training. That's the Emergency Operations Center training. And we have a variety of county staff taking the trainings in all the different functions that happen in EOC. So we're pretty much amping up on staffing in case we have an incident this summer or soon. So just want to let you know that. We are working on providing the public information on a date when we want to do a code red test. It was requested at a previous meeting here. So we're trying to coordinate when we want to do that. I know Supervisor Morris has some plans for a public community preparedness meeting. So we wanted to be sure and share that with the public as well.
Leslie, Ed mentioned that he was going to do, probably in our first June meeting, a presentation to the board on the iPause system.
Right.
So
It's still on his radar.
Okay.
I think it's just a matter of getting the information in PowerPoint ready for you.
Got it.
And that's pretty much all the good news I have for you today.
Great.
Do you have any questions for me in our department? Okay, questions?
All right,
Excellent.
thank you. Okay. Anybody else? All right. Moving on to CAO Coons.
Nothing to report.
All right, County Council, anything?
Thank you.
All right. Board members. Supervisor Brown.
Let's see, on the 9th, I was in Reading at a Leading with Emotional Intelligence leadership class through CSAC. So if I become overly emotional, you'll have to bear with me.
We've got the taser.
That was only out of county travel. On the 15th, we had the scoping meeting at the Veterans Memorial. A decent showing of people, and we looked at more maps and locations and zoning and heard worries, and that's about it.
Yesterday, pleasure of the executive board with PSA 2 up in Bernie, PSA 2 AAA. That's my out-of-county travel.
Great. Supervisor Rose.
No out-of-county travel, but I do want to update the board on the oil spill on the Lewiston Dam and down the Lewiston River. There was around 500 gallons of, up to 500 gallons of hydraulic fluid spilled down the river. Environmental health was the first to notify. There seemed to be a little lack of communication between the Bureau and Environmental Health. Christie is planning to meet and set up a better communication system between those departments, and hopefully, if, God forbid, this sort of thing happens in the future, we'll be better prepared for it.
All right. Supervisor Chadwick.
There was a CAP board conference call, so I didn't have to go to Glen or Calusa on the 8th. And then we had another conference call on the 13th in regards to cannabis educational outreach. The Trinity County Office of Ed, the LPC, we had our last meeting for this school year on the 14th. We also had the disaster council that you chair and PATH on the 14th. And then we had the retail cannabis at the Veteran Hospital on the 15th. The hot wash for the fire season was the 16th. I did get to look at the Magoo, which is a mobile unit. That was my first time getting to see that. And so basically, if we have no communications, the Office of Emergency Services has a portable mobile, it's a truck, but it's way more than a truck. So that was really impressive, and I'm pretty sure you can get online and see it. And then it was we had another conference call for SCUD, and then on Friday I had the pleasure of meeting with Supervisor Morris with BLM and Douglas City to review some of the community's concerns. That's it.
All right, thank you. Certainly joined Supervisor Chadwick on the BLM field trip in Douglas City, and also last week to Eureka for the North Coast Air Quality. I do want to update the board. If you recall our previous meeting, we had a member of the public who was concerned about some of the more air cleaning restrictions that were hitting certain size trucks. So I wanted to know what was going on with that. Those regulations are coming out of CARB, the state organization that has been rolling out regulations probably for 10 years on this issue, certainly affecting a lot of the rural areas and smaller truck operators. And originally the carve out for, as the woman was speaking, was 5,000 miles, and then it got reduced to the 1,000 miles that would be a carve out. That reduction, I'm told, was a result of a lawsuit that larger trucking industry took the state to court after they had went through the hoops of all the regulations, and they said it's not fair for these small guys to do it. So that's where some of that tightening up came through, was this lawsuit in the last couple of years. So any letter, anybody wants to do anything, it would go directly to CARB. We could do something and copy our CRC and CSAC and our representatives, but that's the update on that.
So I did a follow-up with CAL FIRE. Their equipment is exempt, and I had a request to Mr. Tippett, but he hasn't gotten back because I wanted to know if that would prohibit any of the equipment that we have, and he just hasn't gotten back yet.
All right. So that's, I just want to follow up on what she was bringing to us as well. So it is a CARB versus the regional North Coast Air Quality. All right. Moving on to ad hoc committees, commercial cannabis ordinance amendments. Same as
Nothing.
we are certainly still in a holding pattern until our CEQA returns and amendments have to then be done. Federal lands legislation. Ad hoc.
Jeremy has a meeting set up with Mr. Driscoll next month, and he's going to voice some of our concerns and work with Mr. Driscoll.
All right.
Anything to add?
No, I'll be fighting for the county's
Interest.
Interest?
interests, plural.
All right, Retail Cannabis Ordinance Committee, ad hoc. Any updates? You guys did your
You kind of reported out already on it,
Yeah.
so have you thought about a downriver, I guess?
I don't have a date
Okay.
yet for downriver or location.
Okay.
Do you guys have an anticipated date when you'll have a draft that goes to the Planning Commission?
Not this moment.
No.
We've kicked around some different things, and we're still working on that, so thank you for that.
Okay, moving on to county matters. These items include non-routine or controversial matters that are listed alphabetically by department. A member of the board or staff may request that an item be heard out of order. Anybody? I don't think we need to move any items. Moving on to item 4.1, acknowledge receipt of and assign a supervisor to draft a response to grand jury report 2018-19, the vote by mail process. So, Jeremy, this is kind of a new item for you. We typically yearly get grand jury reports on a variety of issues, and we typically assign to a board member, and usually it's other staff related to that department or issue, and we follow up on this report. It's usually about 8 weeks, 10 weeks it will be due roughly. So that's how these work. Anybody like to volunteer?
I think it's right up John's alley.
Supervisor?
Not a problem. My pleasure.
Oh, okay.
Oh, absolutely. My
Okay.
pleasure, yes. I've read it, it's interesting.
All right, so any comments on this item?
Kate Graves from Lewiston. I would like my comments entered into the record when I'm done. I'll read what I can in the time I have, and then people can finish it in the minutes if they like. The 2017-18 Trinity County Grand Jury Report characterizes issues as political, partisan, and tales of cyber breaches. This is disingenuous to the people of Trinity County who care and actually work towards legally held, honest, and open elections. I don't know why these claims were included in the report, and no election observers were interviewed. Missing from this report, it was a public outcry that prompted an alternate person to run the June 2018 election. It wasn't simply the decision of the appointed elections office, as the report implies. Though Darrell Forsland was paid to conduct the election, he still reported to and was under the management of appointed election officer Shanna White. Appointed election officer Shanna White was also kept up to date by the grand jury members themselves. Several discussions witnessed in the hallway outside Shanna White's private office include conversations with grand jury members stating that they would email Shanna White because she was still in the loop. During the 2018 election, the grand jury foreperson was repeatedly seen entering Shanna White's private office alone for private meetings. Other grand jury members were also seen entering and leaving Shanna White's private office. And I'm just letting you know because there's an obvious conflict of interest here. And if you would like to interview people besides the grand jury when you do your response, that would be responsible of you. Around the same time, Shanna White made statements published in the Trinity Journal, which included the claim that 3 grand jury members apologized to her about the previous grand jury election report. Publicly and while campaigning, Shanna White maligned the previous grand jury reports and its members. Ms. White has publicly and repeatedly stated that the grand jury members are part of the election contest filed over the J bond, causing harm to the school and the children, which even Shanna White knows is completely untrue. Ms. White also publicly stated that the former grand jury targeted her, and the grand jury election report was vindictive and not based on facts. Supervisor Groves made similar statements, including several statements made publicly claiming the grand jury members were wrong and broke the law, but if Supervisor Finley's doing it, then there's no conflict there. There were other things that happened. The grand jury basically said no laws were broken. They also said that the report was based on following Election Code 15104, which is completely untrue because the grand jury did not watch signature verification. One grand jury member watched it for 2 days, and that was on, it's in here somewhere. I put the dates in my letter. But then, it was May 15th and 16th. And then Shanna White saw someone was observing the election or the signature verification, and we never saw it happen again. So this was completely not independent. I appreciate the work Dara did, and the grand jury did not follow the letter of the law. Their findings ignored the law, and I think whoever does this report should look into the law and what the grand jury actually observed.
So you can give those to Tina?
Yes. Do you have a copy of the grand jury report in your minutes?
from last year?
No, for this one, is that gonna be with it?
Mhm.
Okay, thank
Could you email me yours, please?
you. The letter?
Is that-
Sure.
Okay, any other comments, questions? Okay, all right.
Thank you, board.
Yes, John. Do we need to vote or that's?
Yeah, I was just gonna ask council that. Council, is this just a sign?
Just a sign.
Okay,
You'll vote on the report when it comes back.
right. Do you want me to reassign to something else?
No, why?
Because you made that funny comment, so.
No, just,
Okay.
thank,
All right. All right, moving on to Health and Human Services. Item 4.2, approve a budget adjustment for Welfare Department 5,000, increasing revenues by 31,436, interfund expenses by 8,000, and fixed assets by 71,700, and decreasing services and supplies by 18,924, and other charges by $29,340. Approve a budget adjustment for Public Guardian Department 5,100, increasing transfers in by $32,000. Services and supplies by 800, and interfund expenses by $31,200. Approve a budget adjustment for contributions to other funds, Department 1990, increasing transfers out by $32,000. And approve a budget adjustment for contingency general fund, Department 9901, decreasing appropriation for contingency by $32,000. Increase in general fund appropriations in the amount of $32,000. Current balance in the appropriations for contingency is $59,037. Current cash balance in Human Services Fund 111 is $111,793. Sorry about that. I was getting word weary. All right, Letty.
Okay, so I have to say, of the many years that I've worked for services, the first time we've had to request contingency funds for our public guardian program. Primarily, it's for the reasons as mentioned in the staff report. We've had a tremendous amount of increase of conservatorship cases in public guardian, and some of those cases have required a higher level of representation from county council, and definitely more staff time. For example, our case count in October for conservatorship was 12, it's now currently 24. So it's doubled, which requires definitely more staff time, and again, like I mentioned, we've had some higher level cases that require legal representation, and again, county council costs increase, which is really between the staff time and county council's services, it did increase the cost of doing business. So this request is just to hopefully keep our public guardian whole for the closeout of this year. We are pursuing other funding sources such as targeted case management. You've heard of it called TCN Law. It's a state program that supports our agencies that work with Medi-Cal cases. So it's Medi-Cal administration activities as well as targeted case management. So we have a meeting in June to talk to the state about whether that can support our public guardian program, because it used to many years ago, I want to say 15 years ago when I was there, we didn't have that funding source. So I hope this is not a continuous request, but for this particular year, we are requesting contingency funds.
Questions, board members? I have a quick one. Are you seeing an increase of this caseload?
Yeah, we've had more referrals than we've had in a long time.
That's what it seems.
And as was mentioned earlier, I mean, our elderly population is increasing, and a lot of them become very vulnerable, and they are referred to our public guardian program. So we have our payee program as well as our conservatorship program. So it, yeah, definitely increased.
Vice Mayor?
So where do those referrals come?
The public or public agencies throughout the county.
Yep.
All right, any questions from the public? All right, Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board and entertain a motion.
Motion to approve, 4.2 as is.
Finley, second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So moved. All right, moving on to 4.3, Human Resources. Thank you, Letty. Increase the allocation for Health and Human Services Department, Human Services Division from 5 to 6 staff service analysts 1-2, effective May 21st, 2019. Approximate cost and salary benefits per month for staff service analyst 1 at A step is $5,359, and for staff services analysis 2 at A step is $5,838. Good morning, Shelley.
Good morning, Shelley Nelson, HR Director. So the department is requesting to be able to have an additional allocation added so they can recruit and hire for a analyst. And it would be within the Human Services Division, Employment and Training Division unit. And they currently do not have an analyst in this division. They've been increasingly receiving federal mandates, new system rollouts. They're in the need of someone to be able to provide analytical and systemic support to the program manager of that division and to the unit overall. They're requesting to have this allocation. It would be a tremendous asset to both the department and the communities that they are serving. The Employment and Training Services Division really gears toward helping families achieve self-sufficiency.
Any first questions for Shelley? Members of the public? All right, seeing none, bring it back to the board.
Motion to approve 4.3 as presented.
Second.
All right, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So moved. Thank you, Shelley. All right. I can't believe it.
Oh, believe it.
Don't jinx
Yeah. Aren't you looking forward to it? Okay, moving into closed session at 9:51, I might add. No, I want to review it.
Okay.
Take a break. So item 5.1 for closed session, Government Code Section 54954.5, Public Employee Evaluations, County Administrative Officer, and Director of Transportation. Any comments on these items? All right, we'll take a 5-minute break, and then we'll come back. Hey, John. Direction was given on both closed session items. And adjourned.